All right, everyone. So we do have another one of these rate up type summon events in Raid Shadow Legends. If you go to the news section, you'll see it right here at the top. SKULLCROWN Incantation Events. Well, I don't think it's that much of a surprise that we see these pop up, especially after the Gore Grab one, but it's also important to know that this one is a bit different, and because it uses Void Shards instead of Ancient Shards, if you actually crunch the numbers and do the math behind this event, it does kind of turn out a little bit differently than the Gore Grab one. So I wanted to give you guys some important information about this, and then you guys can kind of decide whether you feel like it's going to be worth it or not. I'll give you the short version right here at the start, and I will say, especially to those of you guys that are free to play or you don't spend a lot of money on the game, if you are very limited on resources, this is definitely still not going to be a good time to summon. There's going to be better opportunities. This is a rate up event, but do not confuse that with a double rates event. They are much different, and if you actually end up going to the summoning portal, you'll see here if you click on the actual rates, they are still exactly the same as they are. So your chances of pulling epics and legendaries from all the different shards is still going to be the same as before. So you have an 8% chance of getting an epic from a void shard and a 0.5% chance of getting a legendary from a void shard. If this was a double rates event and not a rate up event for a specific champion, your chances of getting an epic would be 16% and your chances of getting a legendary would be 1%. So they usually end up doubling them for, of course, those double rate events. So don't confuse it. Very, very important to note about this event. So if you are limited on resources, I absolutely still would save for one of those double rate events. They don't come around too much, but you know, those of you guys who do save up on those resources, it is as important as it can be to get as much value from your limited resources as you possibly can. This is why I personally always like to save for those double rate events, but you know, that's going to be up to you. Now, I will say this, it is a little bit different than the actual Gore Grab event, and the big reason is because SKULLCROWN is a Void Epic. She's not one of the Affinity Epics, she's going to be specifically a Void Epic, which means that this event right here is not going to involve Ancient Shards, it's actually going to involve Void Shards. So when you actually end up crunching the numbers a little bit, because there are not as many Void Epics in the game as there are for all the other different affinities, your chances of getting SKULLCROWN are going to be, or they're going to seem a bit higher. So I actually went back through and I did the math, I did the numbers, I counted, I might be off by 1 or 2, but I counted 20, I think it was 21 Void Epics, you know, between 20 to 22 if I missed one or so, in the 20 ballpark range of how many Void Epics there are in the game. So already you can tell that that is quite a bit lower than the number of regular affinity epics, which is around the 100 point. So we have around 20 Void Epics. Now, I like to use this example once again just so you can kind of get a better understanding of how these events work. Take a bag of marbles. Every single Void Epic in the bag of marbles is going to represent 1 marble. So normally when we don't have one of these rate up type events, SKULLCROWN would be just 1 marble in the bag. But now, because we have 10 times the chance to summon her, put in 9 more marbles in the bag, so now you have about 30 marbles in the bag, and 10 of them are going to end up being SKULLCROWN. So when you crunch the numbers now, if you do manage to pull a Void Epic, which once again, very importantly, the chances of getting a Void Epic are not any higher, they're still only 8%. If you do somehow manage to get lucky and pull a Void Epic from your Void Shards though, now instead of having about a 1 in 20 or so chance of getting a SKULLCROWN, it's going to be closer to around 1 in 3. So you can see that the difference is pretty substantial considering there are not as many Void Epics in the game as there are just other Void or other non-Void Epics, right? So we only have around 20 total compared to 100, so if you make the chance 10 times higher, it actually turns out to be a pretty decent chance if you do pull an epic for it to end up being a SKULLCROWN. Now still, when you do crunch the numbers, at an 8% chance of pulling an epic from Void Shards, you still have to pull an average of about 12.5 Void Shards just to actually get an epic. And then when you do somehow pull an epic, if you are lucky, even then it's still only about 1 in 3 times going to be a SKULLCROWN. So when you boil it all down, you're looking at around a 1 in 35 or so chance from Void Shards of getting a SKULLCROWN. But that's a bit of a difference from the I think it was 130, 140, whatever it was, 1 in 100 plus for the Ancient Shards when it comes to Gore Grab. Now it's only around 1 in 35, but once again, another downside is the game does actually treat Void Shards as much more valuable than Ancient Shards, and you can always tell when they have these extremely expensive Void Pack offers pop up. As you can see, this is the one that I have. I think this is completely insane, but you know, people do buy these up. You have 16 Void Shards, 45 Void Brews, and 1,750 gems, as well as a couple million silver for $100. Now, if this was Ancient Shards instead of Void Shards, the game would give you quite a bit more than 16. They would be selling probably 45, 50, something along those lines. So generally speaking, Polarium, they treat Void Shards as, you know, roughly 3 to 4 times as valuable as an Ancient Shard. But in return, if you are looking for a Skull Crown, you're going to have a higher chance of actually pulling one, considering there are not as many Void Epics in comparison to the Gore Grab events. Now, this is going back towards the start of the video where I was talking about my opinions. What do I think about all this? Well, I think it is a little bit better than the Gore Grab one, just because you actually do now have a reasonable chance of getting Skull Crown, whereas before you could have pulled hundreds of Ancient Shards and still not had even a chance of getting Gore Grab, just because there's so many non-Void Epics in the game. So I think it's a little bit better, but I still absolutely think there are going to be much better times to save your shards, especially given how rare Voids are. The game does not give them out as often as Ancient Shards. They're considered to be more valuable. They're worth more during the summon rushes, and overall, I really like to just save my shards for the double rate events. Now, I can see how that might not be the best plan for everyone because they don't really run the double rate events too often. They really seem to be random. I've been saving up my Ancient Shards for an incredibly long time, and they still haven't had a double rates event for Ancient Shards. So if that's not really the style of gameplay for you, if you really don't like holding on to your shards or your resources for very long, I don't think that this is an absolutely awful time to actually summon for Void Shards, considering that Skull Crown is actually a pretty good epic Void champion. But if you really want to min-max it and you guys are trying to get as many resources out of your shards as you possibly can, there's still going to be better opportunities. Considering the chances of actually getting epics or legendaries is still the same and it's not been doubled, it's definitely not going to be the most efficient events. Now, another reason why I say it's not as bad is because I actually went through and I took a look at all the different Void Epics in the game. I saw how good they were, and there's honestly just a lot of not really super great Void Epics in Raid Shadow Legends. So going back through the entire list, again, there's around 20, 21, 22 of them. There looked like there were maybe 6 to 7 really good ones, and then the other ones were kind of like, you know, in the middle of the road or maybe a little bit below average. So that alone, considering that Skull Crown is considered to be I would say a really good Void Epic. I mean, she's definitely not bad. She has two AoE attacks. Her skill 1 is an AoE, plus it puts an extra hit if the target has more than 50% HP. And her second attack is also an AoE with a added weaken, which can be increased. She's definitely not bad. With the speed aura for Arena, she's a solid champion. So if you don't have her, you know, this isn't the absolute worst event ever. It's definitely, in my books, once again, not as bad as the Gore Grab one, but there are going to be better opportunities to use your Void Shards if you do hold on to them and you guys really want to get as much out of your resources as you can. Because there are a lot of not really super great Void champions, I think that it makes this event a little bit better as well, because especially if you don't have a Skull Crown, you know, if you do end up summoning from Void Shards, it makes it so that you actually get a really good usable Void Epic instead of getting one of the, you know, 13, 14 or so Void Epics that just aren't really that great. So, you know, overall, I think you guys kind of get the message. I can't really bash this one as much as the Gore Grab one, just because if you boil down the numbers, it is a little bit better, but still, those of you guys who are free to play, if you don't mind holding on to your resources, if you guys don't mind kind of saving up like I do, especially with my Ancient Shards, if this doesn't bother you, there's going to be better opportunities, guys. Trust me, there absolutely will. So I wanted to give you guys this information. You know, I really hope that this is not the only Halloween type event that we have, because that would be very disappointed. This is not what I was expecting when I woke up this morning to see. I really was hoping for some other Halloween type announcement, especially considering that if you guys actually take a look at all the different Plarium banners across their social media, you'll see that they've kind of changed everything out with Halloween pumpkin themes. I can't really say anything too much from this. Some people are saying this is 100% means there's going to be a Halloween fusion. There's going to be some Halloween event coming. I mean, I would love to say that, but there is a small possibility that they just changed their artwork because it is, you know, the Halloween season, and maybe that's as far as it goes. I want to stay on the bright side, I really do, but I would love to see some other fun events popping up in the actual game, especially around Halloween now, rather than just these kind of, you know, I don't even know if you can really call these events at this point anymore. So that's my feedback, everyone. I'm hoping that you guys are able to take something away from this. So if you guys were and this helped out, consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Thank you very much for all the support, everyone. We are getting close to 18,000 subscribers, so thank you. And if you have a quick second, you want to help out and toss a quick like on the video as well, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Have a fantastic day, and until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.